Welcome to another episode of the Village Boy Podcast. It is your host, Trez. And today, like with every other episode, we are reacting to a game. One of those things that you have to scratch your head and you go, my goodness, what are these people thinking about? And this is why, for the life of me, I cannot identify as a Republican because when you really think about what Republicans stand for, and you're like, yeah, they stand for this, but what are they doing? And I cannot identify for the crazy Democrats because they say one thing and do something else. But the Republican Party, boy, this is a new low for the Republican Party. And why am I branding this as the Republican Party? Because Donald Trump is the face of the Republican Party. Everything Donald Trump says, stands, and represents the Republican Party. This is the official stance of the Republican Party. So let's get into it. Without further ado, we're not trying to make this a long video because it's pretty interesting. So on the 19th, through his Truth Social page, it says Truth Social, but it's a bunch of malarkey in Biden's voice. The museums throughout Washington's, but all over the country, are essentially the last remaining segment of woke. The Smithsonian is out of control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. So, how bad slavery was. This is what the president, the sitting president of the United States, is saying, how we're still talking about how bad slavery was. So, we've not moved on. We're still talking about it, how bad it was. For goodness sakes, Republicans, stand down sometimes. There's some things that you don't need to say. This is one of them. There's some things that I understand that a lot of you have been hybrid modern European importations, and you don't understand the legacy of history in this country, but this is what this show is going to do to help you, remind you, because most of you are first generation, second generation, so you don't go back far enough. Like Trump, he doesn't go back far enough. His grandfather was only here from Germany not too long ago, so his history does not go far back enough. You are not going to see any white Americans who, except Charlie Kirk, of course. And I wrote a book about Charlie Kirk. You guys need to go get it out of Amazon. I'll put the link in the description as well. Read it about who Charlie Kirk is. And there's something about the Chicago people that become conservative. There's that racist, inbred nature about them. Let's not distract. Let's continue here. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future. We are not going to allow this to happen. And I have instructed my athletes to go through the museums and start the exact same process that has been done with colleges and universities where tremendous progress has been made. This country cannot be woke because woke is broke. We have the hottest country in the world and we want people to talk about it, including in our museums. This is what a first, second generation European import sitting president is talking about a historic legacy of a country for which he is president. So, of course, supporters of his have been running all over the place, sympathizers of this, I guess white fatigue or white people are tired. And this is their little reaction. White Republicans are obviously tired of their own history. And they're like, yeah, we need to move on past this before we get into that. Let's listen to one of the apostles of Donald Trump making an apology on this particular stuff. Jillian Michael. I thought she was liberal, but boy, she's tired about racism and she's tired about slavery, American history, all about slavery. Let's go ahead and listen to this panel on CNN talk about that.
To the Smithsonian, he's effectively now has some random person deciding what is appropriate for the Smithsonian to teach in terms of American history, things that don't offend parts of the MAGA base, right? So we're now literally reviewing parts of American history and parts of American culture to make sure it comports with Dear Leader and what the MAGA
Can we
organization
address
wants.
some of those things that are in there? Because have you looked at some of the things that are being reviewed?
Slavery was a bad thing that was to talk about.
Okay,
like forgive
he's
me for
not
saying
whitewashing slavery. So
he's not.
He's not. No,
Okay.
he's not. And you cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does. But let's talk about the fact that when
you're not tied to just one race, ma'am, it's just one race. There were just two races in America at the time: the whites and the imported African black people who were that you guys had pushed and killed the Indians and forced them off the coast to a reservation, so they don't count. So it was just white people and black people, Madam Jillian. So I don't understand how you're saying now that. Please, you have to explain this to me because I don't understand. Let's watch this again. So I try to. I'm like, what is
imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race?
Yes, it's just one race. It's actually in Americans' context, it's just one race. You can, whether you're tired, you're not tired, whether you have, you cannot change the truth. It was just one race. It was the white race. You cannot rewrite your history. You cannot be tired of your legacy. Listen, it is the white history. White Americans enslaved black people. You cannot wash this off America's history. It is part and parcel of your history. Slavery is to America the way the Constitution is to America. Jillian, you need to know this, right? It's like a birthmark. This is something that you cannot undo. You cannot change. You cannot be tired of. It is the legacy. Whether you have become this fantasy country, this country that has evolved, it is still your legacy. You cannot undo what was done in the past. And we're going to talk more about this. Let me let you continue.
Which is pretty much what every single exhibit does. But let's talk about the fact that when you look
at
let's talk about the fact.
I mean, slavery in America was.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans owned slaves?
But it was a system of white supremacy.
You realize that slavery?
Yes. Let's go with that number. Less than 2% of white Americans own slaves. Yes, but those slaves worked on sugarcane, cotton, and everything else that boosted the economy. American capitalism is based on free labor, and that's why you cannot replicate American capitalism anyway, because you need over 3 million people to work for free for over 200 years to be able to have the kind of economic boost that America had coming out of slavery. So when they say you 3% own slaves, yes, but the impact into the economy, all of the white people at the time benefited from the works of the slaves, because when they make the cotton, the folks that now had to transform the cotton into fabrics, those were white folks. The folks that were buying the fabric that was now clothes, those were white folks. When they used sugar cane plantations, the money that circulated from the income generated from the plantations came from the hard unpaid labor of slaves. So the entire economy was riding on the backs of those slaves. And Jillian, can I ask you a question? What percentage of Americans are billionaires? I'm sure you would say probably less than 2% or 3% of Americans are billionaires. And these are the people that you would say are the backbone of American economy, because they're the people that you want to tax less, because they say, per Republican standards, these are the people creating jobs in America. So if you look at that 2-3% of the billionaires, and you are like, if you tax these people a lot, the economy is going to tank and this and that, you make excuses for them. Why are you now saying that only 2 or 3% of white folks, those were the billionaires at the time? Those slave owners, they owned slaves because they had the ability to own slaves. They were the billionaires. They were your Elon Musk, your Elon Musk, your Jeff Bezos, your Mark Zuckerberg. Those were the billionaires of that time. They were just not counting who was a billionaire back then, but the way you were billionaires because you had a plantation, you could own slaves. You were the billionaires. Those was the 1%, right, Mrs. Jillian? That was the 1% of the economy at that time. And the 1% owned the Amazons, the Walmarts, and everything. And you see, Amazon is in our everyday. So if Amazon is using slave labor to produce Amazon products or ship Amazon products, we are all benefiting from that. And that's why we're having the kind of cheap prices that we're having, because we're using slave labor. So yes, ma'am, Jillian, the entire society benefited from slave labor. And like I said, American capitalism cannot be replicated anywhere else. A country can come to America and look at it and say, oh, I love capitalism, is the way, is the future. Let me go ahead and replicate this capitalism in my country. It cannot be done, because the foundation of Americans' capitalism was built on 200 years of free labor. 3 million people working for over 150 to 200 years, free labor. So you have to go to your country, look for 3 million people that are going to work until they die. They're going to work as slaves. So you're going to treat them under the same harsh conditions that America treated its black population. You're going to treat them under the same, so they have the same output. So you generate the same, because you're not paying them. They're not assets, right? They're not humans. You don't even consider them as humans. So you are going to work them till their bones fall off. That's the only way you are going to be able to replicate American capitalism. So the capitalism we see today was born out of that capitalism. So the benefits, the hard work, and I'll tell you, the truth is nothing has really changed. And that's why you're still seeking for cheap labor in China, in India, all over the world. You're looking for cheap labor because it was born out of free labor. And because of that little guilt that you have, and if American business people had the opportunity to still use free labor, they would use free labor. So Jillian, you still benefit from slavery till this day. The ideology, the concepts, the practice. It's just that the world has changed, and now there's a little bit of guilt, because why are companies rushing to China to go get cheap labor over there? Why is Elon Musk hiring cheap employees to come work on his plan when he can pay them any amount of money? You think if Elon had an option to have developers work for free, he would not employ them? He would employ them and milk them like the ancestors before him did. Granted, he's an immigrant. So Jillian, you cannot argue here that it was just a small group of people that owned slaves. That was the backbone of the American economy at that time, right? The billionaires at the time controlled sugar, cane, cotton, sugar's cane, cotton, and every other thing. There was no oil. There was nothing. That was the engine of the American economy back in the days. And everybody worked tertiary, primarily tertiary in that sector in one way or the other. What did the cotton do? What did the sugar produce? You sold it internally and you exported it. So the people who were exporting the sugar, who worked the farms that produced the sugar cane, the sugar, the slaves did. So now the slaves put the thing, and it goes into infrastructure, the industries that are being run by the white folks. So the white folks are immediately benefiting from the farms that are worked by slaves. So Jillian, the entire country, including those who were opposed to slavery, benefited from slavery. Everybody who was in America at that time, even the Indians, benefited from slavery, because the money, the exchange of money, if I have money and I come to your store and I buy something and that money was gotten because I had an interaction with slave labor, the money that you were receiving is blood money. Blood money does not stop from a generation. If we did something in the past that gave us wealth that was illegally conceived, and we've taken that conceptual money that we had from let's say doing something so sinister, so illegal, and we've taken that money into the main market. Everybody that has touched that money has touched blood money. And if you've gone to become richer and you've created generations upon generations, that is still generations of blood money. Jillian, it doesn't get whitewashed. You cannot be part of Trump's whitewashing of Americans' history, America's legacy.
Slavery
Were
is
slaves
thousands of
and
years old.
White people were
Do you know
the slave
who
owners.
In
was
American-
the first race to
I didn't
try
realize
to
this was
end
controversial.
slavery?
Wait a second.
Okay,
Well,
I'm
what's
sorry, Jillian,
controversial
I'm very
is
surprised
this is
that
an
you're trying to
extraordinary
litigate.
exercise in historical revisionism.
I'm really
historical
surprised.
revisionism. Do you realize that
Jillian, I'm surprised that you're trying to litigate who was the beneficiary of slavery and
I'm
who
not.
was not.
What I'm trying to tell you
in
is
the
that
context of American history,
okay.
in the context of American history, what are you saying is incorrect by
What I'm
saying
is
that
you
it was white
cannot-
people oppressing black
every
people?
single thing is like, oh no, this is all because white people bad, and that's just not the truth. Like, for example, every single exhibit, I have a list of every single one. Like, people migrated from Cuba because white people bad, not because of Castro. Yes, no, it's in there. That's what I'm saying. You don't actually know what's in there. Do you know that when you walk in the front door,
what exactly?
the first thing you see is the gay
Jillian,
flag?
you have a lot of stuff in front
Yeah,
of
I
you.
do.
Conflicting the gay flag and the slave, and this is what has always annoyed me with the Democrat Party, because the Democrat Party used black people as a cover for everything. Every policy that the Democrat Party wants to pass in America, they would use blackface. Every agenda, every nefarious, deranged agenda that the Democrat Party wants to pass, they will use blackface. And then somehow shift the black people out of the conversation, and then you would see the full-fledged argument. They've always used black people to disguise what it is that they want to. And I've heard people in the LGBT community say the black struggle is the same as the gay struggle. Are you out of your freaking mind? Have you ever been captive and locked up and worked? Have you had a generation of trauma? Just the sheer comparison, and this is what Democrats do. This is what for the next 100 years, I don't think I would ever identify with that party, because it is rooted in sheer evil. The Republican Party is rooted in ignorance. It's a party full of ignorant people. And ignorant people say the things that Trump say. Let's get to this. Right? Let's get to this so we round up this conversation. Would you ever, anywhere on earth, have a panel having a conversation about let's move on from the Holocaust? Would you dare ever on any panel have a conversation on, okay, yeah, it's time to move on. Yeah, the Jews, they suffered all of this, but Israel has developed. Israel is the fastest economy with startups. Israel is a secular country. It's a developed country. Israel, that would be an example to point to Israel. Like, look at, they went through a traumatic, a horrible, terrible experience with the Holocaust. But look at Israel. They're a developed country. They're the most free, live your best life kind of country, circular in any way possible. You can marry kids. You can do whatever you want to do in Israel. There are really no laws. The only laws in Israel is let's eliminate the Palestinians. That's it. That is the most futuristic country you could ever imagine. But can somebody in their right mind ever sit on a panel and say, it's time to move on from the Holocaust? No. But you know what white people in America do? They say it's time to move on from slavery. No, it's never time to move on from slavery. It's never time to move on from the Holocaust. Do you see Trump attacking the Holocaust museums in America? There are plenty all over America. Do you see? I mean, people from Israel use the Holocaust to this day to get benefit. Germany paid reparations to the Jews, and duly so. They killed the Jews. The Germans imprisoned and did all of this evil and monstrous act on the Jewish people. And the Germans paid reparations. The Germans still have guilt, right? The Germans they can't even utter a word when it comes to Israel and the Jews because of that internalized guilt. America enslaved Black people. And white Americans are saying, let's move on. It is woke. Everything is about slavery. And they did not even pay reparations. They did not even help these people get into a functioning society. They didn't even do a quarter of what Germans did. They threw money at the problem. Throwing money at the problem, it's not going to help the problem. Acknowledging the problem, creating working solutions that would address that problem would help address the pain point that you caused, your ancestors caused, and you as a beneficiary in this modern society. So you have to look at the example of Germany. And America has paid reparations to everybody it has inflicted one way. America has paid reparations to the Japanese. America has paid some kind of forgiveness to the Chinese. But America has never regarded Black people as worthy of adjusting or paying some kind of compensation for the pain and suffering inflicted on their ancestors by the American people. You love your Constitution, that's how you should love your slave history. It is one and the same. Slavery started before the Constitution. Slaves arrived in a country when it was not even called America. Slaves got here before the Constitution of this country. That's why I say slavery is to America as the Constitution is to America. You cannot love the Constitution more than the legacy of his slavery that predates that Constitution. That is hypocrisy. And on the Village Boy, these are the kind of things we call out on the Village Boy podcast. You cannot say you're for the Constitution, but let's go ahead and whitewash the legacy, the foundation. Without slavery, America will not be the country that it is today. That's your starting capital. That's your starting investment. That's the concept. That's the build of this country. You cannot in any way, shape, or form whitewash your startup capital. It's like saying, Jeff Bezos borrowed $145,000 from his father to build the empire that it is Amazon today. And somehow we want to go back and say that loan did not start the $1 trillion that's Amazon today. Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? No. So yes, slavery is every part of America's history and legacy, and it would be so forever and a day. It cannot be changed. It cannot be whitewashed. Are people going to milk it? Some Israelis milk the Holocaust to get benefits. That's why you cannot say anything to them, because they're going to say, oh my God, we suffered this. You cannot touch them. They're untouchable. And if Black people are untouchable, so be it. Jews are untouchable. You cannot say anything to it. Why do you think you have the right to say anything to a Black American? Were you a slave? Did your ancestors go through this? The Israelis that are here, 80%, 90%, they're going through the stories of their grandparents and great-grandparents that suffered in the hands of the Germans. They are not direct. These are descendants of the Holocaust victims. Granted, there are few of them that still live, but the people right now milking the Holocaust are grandparents, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and sometimes great-great-grandchildren. My great-great-great-great-grandmother was in Auschwitz, and she was gas chambered. This a real story, just like slavery. And somehow, Black people should move on because white people are tired to talk about their own problems. Look, America has taken Israeli problem and put it on their head like a tray of fried plantains. right? The problem that America caused slavery, they are tired to talk about it. They don't want it in their museums. It's woke culture. It's this, it's that. White people are tired to talk about their reality. Let me ask a question. When somebody commits a felony, he's considered a felon or she's considered a felon. Does that rap shit get off your record? For as long as you live, you would always be known as a felon. It doesn't matter what good you have done in your life, how you have changed. Every time that somebody runs your background, it will come up that you are a felon. Just like a registered sex offender, once you register as a registered sex offender, that's a stick. It's a body mark that is not going to come off yourself. People cannot get tired. It's just what it is. This is a society that is very unforgiving for second chances. Yes, they might let you into the society as a second chance, but you're going to pull with you this label that you are a felon, you are a sex offender, you are all of these things. And that's how the society works. You don't get off those people just, oh, I'm tired. Let's move on from the criminals. No, you are always going to be seen as the good guy who has a history of felony. And somehow, white Republicans, I cannot even call Jillian a Republican because she's very, very liberal. White, and this is why it's easy to just say white people. Right? White people are tired of their history, a history of slavery that is America's history. They want to whitewash it. They want to push it to the side. They want to not talk about it, but they want to go talk about Israel. They want to talk about the Holocaust. They want to talk about the pains of the Jews. They want to talk about everything else but their history, their origin, their identity. And I have asked, can you replicate American capitalism anywhere else on earth? Can any country that's just coming out of poverty say, let's look at America as a model? Now you can replicate American Constitution, but you cannot replicate American capitalism, because to do that, you must have over 3 million slaves. It was supposed to be a short one. It's your host for the Village Boy podcast, Trez. If you disagree, put your comments in the comment section. Let's have this conversation, because it's about time we tell these people the truth. It's about time we identify that you cannot be a hypocrite and not be called a hypocrite. The Republican Party is a party of ignorant hypocrites. That's a fact. Don't let them cosplay you. As we're going to talk about the Abrego Garcia issue in the next segment, because what did I say in one of the episodes? That's the Republican Party. Never let these people talk. Half the time, they don't know what they're talking about. Half the time is based on hatred of people that are not white, right? And remember, all through slavery, there were always Black people that stayed in the master's house and had privileges and perks. There are always going to be people that sell out their own. So you're always going to have the base of Black people in the Republican Party that are going to be those people that would sell out their own. Just like on the Democrat side of things, you also have House Negroes on the Democrat side of things that are going to sell out their own. And that's why I don't identify with either one of these parties. But I tell you, because we have two parties and I have to vote, I'm inclined to always vote a Republican, because as crazy as it sounds, as crazy as this is, the Democrats are batshit crazy. Yes, they are. And until they come to this realization and change and do what's good, because it's terrible to know what's good and still do what's wrong. That's why I call them batshit crazy, because they know what's right, but they decide and expressly do what's wrong. Like Jillian right here, she knows what's right, and she's liberal. She's a gay woman, so she's by virtue of that, she's very liberal, right? Her stance. She's always espoused liberal Democrat ideologies. I've never known her as a conservative woman. Not like they're not LGBT conservative people, but Jillian is very leaning liberal on the left side of things. So for her to know better and still say this thing, she's a danger. That's the Democrat base right there. They know what's good, but they say the wrong things. On the right side, they're just dumb. The Republicans, they're just ignorant. And so they say everything that just comes based out of emotion. So you can understand that it's sheer ignorance and hatred. So you're able to manage that. What you cannot manage is the Democrat, because when they say what's right, you expect them to act in a right way. You expect them to then do what's right, but somehow they figure out a way to go through and do what's wrong. See, so with the Democrats, you always lower your guards. When you're hanging out with Democrats, you lower your guards because you think that they've said what's right and you're expecting them to do what's right. So your guards are lower, and then they hit you with, yes, we're tired of slavery. The Smithsonian Museum has. What does that have to do with? What does slavery have to do with LGBT flags? If there are LGBT flags in the Smithsonian Museum and you have a problem with LGBT flags, say we have a problem with LGBT flags in the Smithsonian Museum. Don't conflict racism that is embedded, entrenched, engraved, part of the American culture. It's like your DNA. You cannot change your DNA. Slavery is America's DNA, just as the Holocaust is the Jewish DNA. Do not mistake it. You cannot be for one and be against the other. If you believe that the Jews suffered this pain, if you believe that the Holocaust happened and this was a historic moment of human abomination, and you support that, every initiative to help these people, protect these people so that does not happen again, you cannot then say you're tired of slavery. That's part of your own DNA and you're fighting some other person's war. Was America part of Germany at the time? Did America partake in the Holocaust? No. So how is it more important to protect Jewish legacy? And you should protect Jewish legacy. You should protect Indian legacy. You should protect Hispanic legacy. You should protect any legacy that needs to be protected. But you cannot whitewash your founding. You cannot. All of those legacies come after Black legacy. The Constitution came after slavery. The Constitution enabled, promoted slavery. And then the Constitution also liberated slaves. So this Constitution is also a beneficiary of slavery, as much as it was able to, humans were able to go back and readjust and say now the Blacks are no longer a feat of humans, they are actually full humans. This was your Constitution. So you worship that Constitution, you believe in that Constitution, but you want slavery to be in the back burner. No, it's your history. It is your legacy. It's your DNA. You cannot change your DNA. You could transition. You could LGBT yourself, transition from a man to a woman. You cannot change your DNA. And that's what the Republicans are trying to do right now. They're trying to transgender their history. They're trying to transhistory themselves. They don't want to identify no more with their original history. It is not going to work. We are here to remind you that that's your legacy, that's your history, and own it. It's not a bad thing to admit that that's what we did in the past, and we're ready to move on into a better place. It's your host, Tres. Good night.